Nate, my cousin, serves in the Coast Guard. He has been for more than 10 years. He's not the type of man who fabricates or lies. Up. Among the easiest to understand individuals I know. Genuinely grounded and not superstitious, not afraid, but simply a sensible man who enjoys order and boats. He shared this tale with me during the summer of 2022. I requested more than one repetition from him. Once due to the fact that it was so chaotic. And each time the specifics remained the same. This occurred in 2017, when he was given a lighthouse off the coast of Maine's seashore on a 2E upkeep rotation. It was known as Madness Rock, and it's far away. You are able to only reach it by helicopter or boat. It is merely a rough rocky terrain. One lighthouse on the island, and one supplementary structure for fuel storage and equipment for repair. No power is present. Hardly few cells, no piping, and the grid signal. The actual lighthouse is automated, although it still needs periodic manual maintenance, which is why people are sent out to it by the Coast Guard around once a year. It's typically a solo assignment. However, there had been odd electrical malfunctions the previous year. Thus, they chose to send 2 people on this trip. Individuals, Nate, and a different man named Russell. The initial days went smoothly. Windy, monotonous, and monotonous. While the beacon is checked. Technicians check the backup batteries. Clean and refuel the diesel generator. Removing salt corrosion layers from the interior made of metal. Then they would read, eat modest meals and play to pass the time. Cards. Although it was solitary, it was anticipated. No warning signs. Next, on the Nate got up at around 2 o'clock on the 4th night. Felt strange in the morning. Not ill. Not in agony, like if something. There is a problem with the atmosphere. There was more air than normal, and he claimed that it was like being in a room just prior to a thunderstorm, with the exception of outside, the sky was clean and quiet. He sat, looked up and around. It was gloomy. And then he caught sight of something. There wasn't. Turning away from the beacon. The lighthouse was intended to dispatch a sweeping beam of light every couple of seconds, even when doing maintenance. It was quite important. If the illumination went out. He stood up and trembled. Russell woke up, and they both made ascending the slender spiral staircase to the tower's summit to observe what was continuing. Upon reaching the summit, they discovered the beacon's rotating gears remained in motion, but the real light, the thing itself, was not spinning. Something was stuck in the mechanism. It was a big black fabric, such as a blanket or an old coat stuck firmly in the equipment. Assembling. It was covered and drenched in the mossy, slimy material, and it had a mildew and decaying seaweed odor. Both of them were perplexed. The door had been secured with locks, and windows were sealed. No birds, no wind. It didn't make logic, thus the cloth was taken off. Threw it into the wind outside, and returned to bed, believing it was only some strange isolated incidents. The following at night, the same thing occurred. Once more. Approximately the same period, shortly after. 2. When Nate awoke, he noticed that the beacon wasn't turning. They went to look for. An additional piece of fabric was wedged into the identical mechanism. But this time, it wasn't made of the same fabric. It was smaller. Appeared to be an outdated shawl or scarf. It was red, with borders that were ragged, and saturated with what appeared to be seawater. It even has small crustacea cling to it, as if it had just emerged from the ocean. According to Nate, that was the turning point. Ceased to feel accidental. They examined the windows, the doors, and the supply closet, but everything was safe. They were now beginning to question if they were being tampered with, or, moreover, if something had entered the lighthouse and made a conscious effort to tamper with the illumination. Since that evening, they then started to obstruct the stairwell with bulky containers. After completing the last, they closed the beacon, check upstairs room and the entryway at the bottom fervently. However, on the 7th night, something occurred that Nate still refuses to make an effort to clarify. He claimed that he was trying to go to sleep while lying in bed. Upon hearing Russell murmuring from across the room, however, he was silent. To Nate, to the corner, he was whispering in the space, uttering oddly unconnected, like there was a person standing there. Leaning up, Nate inquired what he was stating. Russell blinked slowly as well. Appeared perplexed. He informed Nate that he wasn't saying anything at all. However, later that evening, when Nate awoke again, Russell was there, occupying the window and gazing down at beneath the rocks. When he inquired about what he was doing, Russell stated that he believed he observed a figure standing on the rocks the previous evening, hardly discernible, near the beacon light's edge. He said they appeared to be being watched. It vanished as soon as the light turned back. Then things began spiraling. Russell became more bizarre every day. He stopped sleeping, stopped talking a lot and simply gazing out the window for several hours. Nate inquired if he was all right, and Russell would merely murmur regarding sounds in the wall or regarding hearing voices coming from within the staircase. Both of them on the 9th night heard footsteps coming up the stairs. Not the typical wind-induced creaking, but genuine, cautious, slow steps, one after the other. The other descending from the lighthouse space above. Nate turned to see. With Russell at the base of the paused, peering up the steps. He inquired Russell and him if he had gone up there. Simply responded no while glancing at him. Then he inquired as to if Nate had. Neither of them had shifted. They listened while standing there, yet the sound of footsteps ceased. The quiet that what came next was far worse. That evening, a dresser was pushed in front of the slept with knives below the bedroom door. Their cushions. On the 11th evening, they were awakened once more by the beacon failing. When they arrived this time, the beacon on top of the lighthouse. The door to the room was ajar. Not merely cracked open, but unlocked. Flung open entirely as if someone had kicked it in. The wind was roaring through. Additionally, after they entered, the beacon wasn't just turned off. It had been intentionally interfered with. The light bulb was unscrewed and positioned vertically at the center of the space. That item is industrial quality. You can't simply twist it off effortlessly by hand. Nate looked at it in fear, and Russell simply whispered that someone had completed. Then Nate sensed a brush up against his back. Something chilly. He whirled around but saw nobody. Russell was pallid. He simply continued to muttering that he was pointing at the wall. Observed a hand emerge from the masonry. They hurried back down the steps, locked in the bedroom alone themselves. Nate didn't not even sleep. Russell began to rock, whispering back and forth in the corner to a non-present individual. The following: Nate used the emergency room in the morning. Called for an early pickup over the phone, claiming that there had been a significant mechanical breakdown. The boat arrived this afternoon, but this is the most eerie section. Upon their arrival, the crew inquired them regarding their distress call, created at 2:12 a.m. that morning, but Nate had never called. He avoided touching the phone till the sun came out. The deckhand claimed to have gotten a jumbled call that arrived with a voice and static, stating that someone is alongside them. Then it stopped. Throughout the entire voyage, Russell remained silent. Back a few years ago, he left the Coast Guard months later and kept it a secret. Actually took place outside. Nate is still performs maintenance tasks occasionally, but he declares that he will never return to Madness Rock. During COVID lockdowns, this occurred. It was close to the location where everyone was becoming quite tired of it and becoming agitated while confined in their homes that are idle. I wasn't dating and was using Tinder at the time and watching Wild Mang folks films and television programs since, in reality, what else could one do on a weeknight while under lockdown? I made a talk with a female I'd been seeing. Years of Instagram followers. Sophia was her name. Her name is Soph. We reside in Long Island, New York, Suffolk County, York. 20 minutes to 30 minutes from Hamptons, and about an hour away from Montauk. One evening, we were bored and decided to spend time together. She is about 5 years old. Conveniently within minutes of me. Thus, I gathered her up. We drove to a place that the park nearby was closed, so we just there, they drank White Claws. I instantly felt the vibe. She was somewhat defiant, yet coolly so. She was willing to trespass, hop fences, and take action such as that. A reciprocal link very rapidly and in less. After an hour, she had the idea of taking a car out to Montauk and going on foot. The Lighthouses perimeter cliff walk. The Lighthouse grounds were technically closed after sunset. I believe they might have generally been closed throughout lockdown. I'm not really certain, but I stated I was down straight away. I enjoy such adventures. Thus, we were done our beverages and drove away eastward to Mock Point. When we arrived, she instructed me to simply park at the lot at the lighthouse. I was a little apprehensive, but she appeared very certain that there would. On a random Tuesday evening, there would be no security Amid the off-season lockdown. I mean, there were no cars in the area, so I believed what she said. She claimed to have completed this previously, even prior to CO. We had another white claw in the parking area. I would anxiously glance around sometimes, ensuring that the area was being surveyed by security vehicles out, and she'd advise me to calm down. After a while, we began to move toward the lighthouse. A lighthouse was spotted at night, so intently and simply gazing up at. It's really awesome, but it's also a little unsettling. Not sure how to describe it, but there was something liminal about it. Thus, ran out of the way. It was a little out, I suppose, of the actual entrance's path, just so that we wouldn't be going straight into the illumination and possibly exposing ourselves. I had never done this before. At the lighthouse at Montauk, she guided us directly to the side of the cliff behind a lighthouse with a number of rocks, creating a kind of trail known as the cliffside. We were only navigating using our flashlights. Perhaps there were lights should be on down there, but almost everything was awry that night. Aside from a couple of lights at the front entry, as well as the lighthouse, naturally, light itself. As we began creating our navigating the cliff walk with awareness of our movements, ultimately Soph, who was called my name, now walking behind me. I turned to face her, and she pointed at light behind her, revealing and on the rocks behind us. With both of us illuminating the area, it was. He's simpler to spot. He had on a hooded coat over his head. He appeared to be a black man, but we was unable to determine age or anything else concerning him. I asked him over the phone if he working here, but he didn't respond. Furthermore, it wasn't moving. I went with it, resulting in the phrase, "We're going to leave. Sorry." The main reason I was anxious was that it was something like a security guard, and that we were about to face consequences, but then the man told us something. He stated, "Y'all want to buy some coke?" Discovered that it wasn't a security officer, but it wasn't a relief to have a strange person. Everything. In fact, it was more nervous because why in the world is this eerie man pursuing us? What made him even in this place? "No, man," I responded. "We're nice," and indicated that Soph should keep shifting. She passed in front of me, and we continued on. As we proceeded, the man also began to move. He didn't subsequently say something like, "You sure?" He didn't say anything, but he appeared to keep up with our speed. Thus far, I would look back using our lights occasionally, and he would be the same separation. It was the most peculiar and uneasy thing. It made the remainder of the encounter uncomfortable as might be. We reached the conclusion of the rushed across the grass and along the cliff walk, returning to the vehicle. That former guy continued to follow, essentially matching our speed. We heard him make a call. "Come on over to us." It had the tone of, "Where are you going?" This man was clearly seeking trouble. I had no desire to provoke anything, so I didn't answer. And I advised Soph not to do so either. We hurriedly walked side by side to the automobile. At that point, we observed 2 additional men approaching us from behind as well. I refused to run since that would undoubtedly result in their pursuing us, but one of the other men made a phone call over to us too. I didn't hear what. Yes, it was. We quickly made our way to the car. Soph and I yelled as soon as we entered. Both understood that the 3 men were correct. Now on top of the vehicle. I secured the vehicle right away. I promised that just seconds before, they both attempted opening in separate ways. Doors. I reversed the vehicle. Essentially the only path where I not going to strike any of them with the vehicle. My automobile was attacked and struck by them as I switched back, but they didn't care, pursuing us once we started moving on the return trip. I am aware that both of us hearts were pounding, and following the after the adrenaline wore off, neither of us spoke. After I dropped her off, we decided to call it a night. Away. We ended up spending a lot of time together following that, and we continue to communicate today. However, to be honest, that night still, it makes me uneasy. It was too near for consolation for a negative event. My pals believe it was a gang. Crips. Perhaps. I had no idea what it was. Interest returning to the outdoors at night. Music. Gregory is my name. This was a tale that my Ian, an old buddy, has repeatedly told me. He experienced that many moons ago. I asked him to provide me with a thorough explanation. In a recent letter that he provided me authorization to post online since it always seemed so eerie. One of those guys you only had was Ian. To have a meeting to confirm that he was the true agreement. 50-something, sturdy, and worn skin after years of exposure to salt air. He was employed in coastal and maritime salvage infrastructure. In essence, when Ian was near the sea when something shattered, one of the individuals you would contact to go fix it. He was more than a contractor, though. He had worked as a ship technician, a diver. Even took some time to perform remote inspections for the state. The man had observed almost anything. Thus, when he spoke, I didn't question this story. Not for a moment. It happened back, he said, when he was employed by a small county in the state of Washington to perform a structural examination of an ancient lighthouse that has been decommissioned. The property had been inherited by the county years prior and were unsure about what to do along with it. Developers intended to destroy it down. The goal of historians was to preserve it. And nobody wants to foot the bill. Ian's work was therefore easy. Go there by yourself. Examine the location both inside and out, and determine if it was even safe to repair. The lighthouse stood atop a secluded rock island approximately 1 hour away from the mainland. It's a small island, but a chunk of dirt and stone, around 300 feet across, with only the actual lighthouse, a generator shed, along with some ancient, rusty scaffolding from earlier decades. The location was no longer in use, and it wasn't precisely a tourist attraction. There were only a few docks, not even any. A little Coast Guard boat on a ledge. At high tide, someone could be offloaded. Ian packed minimally, 4 days' worth of food, a sleeping bag, a clipboard, a few tools. and a maritime two-way radio. The strategy was easy. On Monday, he would be dropped off. Do a thorough walkthrough in the morning by Wednesday, and make a pickup call Thursday afternoon. He didn't believe. Don't go alone. This was what he had done. Something like it countless of times already. When he initially arrived, the location was calm, cloudy, cold, and silent. The atmosphere contained the typical combination of metal, salt, and deterioration that one would anticipate from something that's been sitting and used for many years. The lighthouse itself was perhaps 50 feet high. Constructed in the early 1900s, it had the traditional spiral staircase. This led to the beacon chamber inside. The glass lens wasn't functioning in decades, but the actual structure was firm. Ian performed his routine safety inspections. Window, stair integrity, and support beams. Fixtures. The lower levels floorboards. The levels were crooked but manageable. There was a storage room on the second floor that was devoid of anything but rusting metal cabinets. On the third level was a little sleeping space that was unoccupied for decades. In the end, he laid down his sleeping bag close by on the ground level. It was warmer in the generator room, and away from the wind. The initial evening was uneventful. It was silent, as well. Silent, Ian said. You're unaware of how the world is often boisterous until it's not at all. No insects or birds were present. Not even the slapping sound of the waves. Simply the wind, against the rocks outside. And that was gentle, too. On the second, the fog rolled in thickly that day. Ian awoke up to an entirely white exterior environment. You were only able to see 5 feet beyond the window. It wasn't like any, he said. He has seen fog before. It was so thick that appeared sturdy, as to a wall. However, he didn't consider it a lot. It became heavy there. Fog frequently. He was up much of the day, making notes in the stairway on the upper floor. He saw the first strange thing at that point. Something. The stairway halfway up to the beacon room was undergoing maintenance. Built-in closet. He attempted to. When I opened it on the first day, the hinges were. It was so rusted that it refused to move. However, currently, it had a crack in it. Not much, perhaps an inch, but it was noticeable enough. Had been relocated. He deduced that the moisture had caused it to shift.